everyone, welcome to another episode. Today we have another talent acquisition manager. His name is Steve Jordan. Thanks for being here today, Steve.
Hey, how's it going? I'm really looking forward to being on the show.
Great, thank you. We have a really interesting topic today. This is going to really help you guys in your next conversation with a recruiter, getting offers. But the subject of today's episode is how to work with a recruiter and make them your ally. A lot of people push off recruiters, maybe don't really understand what our purpose is. We're just a preliminary, thing that doesn't really matter, but it does matter. And today we're going to dive into it with Steve's expertise. So, Steve, do you mind just giving the guests a little bit about you?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been a recruiter a little over 7 years now. I've worked in a myriad of industries, a couple different settings, staffing, technical recruiting, corporate recruiting, executive search. So, I'm bringing a lot of that into today's conversation, some different perspective from those different areas, because believe it or not, those specialties all make a difference. So we'll dive in a little bit about what angles some folks might be talking about from.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's a very diverse background. And you have like the internal, the external, and I know job seekers get called from all the above. So
Yeah.
this will be good. Okay. Let's start with what a recruiter does. Because I think everyone has a general idea, but what is actually the purpose of a recruiter and what do you do? What does a day in the life look like?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, a lot of things get thrown around: headhunter, talent acquisition, recruiter, right? We're filling roles, right? There's open positions. People need staff. We're trying to fill those gaps, right? Now, there's a lot of expertise that can go behind that. We're going to get into, again, what makes someone not trustworthy, not untrustworthy, but someone you can build a relationship with, right? But again, when we're getting down to just the P's and Q's, yeah, filling positions with people. That's what recruitment is.
And why does this topic matter in general? Is this a topic that really matters? Or, how in depth should someone really think about their recruiter relationship?
Yeah. So look, I'm biased. I've been doing this for more than 7 years, but it really does matter because that's the first step that you take in creating a culture, in getting anything done, and crossing off project lists, and even representing your organization or a company. Right? Usually the first time you're talking with someone, it's because they applied to a job or someone saw a resume somewhere or got a referral, right? So you want that conversation to be perceived with weight, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like dating. It's your first impression. And
Genuinely. Yeah.
And on both sides, like it's important for the recruiter, their first impression of the candidate, and it's important for the candidate, the first impression that they have of the recruiter, because like you said, the recruiter is it's that first touch. It's representing the company and get a glimpse of the culture, like who this person is, how much do they know. So it's important. It's like a first date. We're the first date.
Sure. Yeah. And like I said, and I don't know if this is getting more in depth, but I push all of my team members to take that more relationship-based conversation style, right? We'll unpack that a little bit later, but that's what, when you're thinking about recruitment, when you're thinking about recruiters, that's something that I would challenge all of your listeners to keep in mind when they go into this conversation is, okay, is this a relationship that I want to engage in?
Yeah. And like you said, you as the talent acquisition manager, you're leading your team to recruit a certain way. And that comes from the culture that is part of the company. But what are some common misconceptions about recruiters? And we see everything online, but what have you seen that's a misconception?
Everyone's experience is valid, right? Some of your listeners probably had really bad experiences with some bad recruiters, because just like anything in life, nothing is black and white, right? Shouldn't take anything without a grain of salt. But some things that, maybe people don't understand about them are, we're just folks, right? I constantly tell my wife, I'm just a guy trying his best, right? So at the end of the day, I really am going to try and stay as transparent as I can, but I also have a job to do. Try not to take anything away from that conversation that you're not able to learn from. If you're talking to a recruiter and they might be hard to get a hold of, well, maybe you're talking to an organization that has a really exclusive search and it really is that intense, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing traction in the search. You could still be very well choice number one. There's just some other priorities that have to go on with the other side of it that aren't communicated to you, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is maybe the impersonality. Yeah, it's true that, if some of your folks have had conversations with recruiters for staffing agencies specifically. There are some really, really big organizations out there. Those recruiters, I mean, those are call centers, right? They
Yeah.
are busy. They don't really care how they come across because they're trying to get their agenda, right? They're trying to get their sales, their numbers up. But just because you had that experience with one person from that organization doesn't mean that that person from a different department or a different type of search has that same sort of mentality. So you really do want to take it on a case by case basis. And I know that might be getting a little bit, diluted from what the question you initially asked, but I do hope that answered it a little bit.
I think so. I mean, you hit on like the number one misconception I see, and it's a big stereotype. Someone has two bad experiences and they say, oh, all recruiters are like this. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that we have a big scam problem in recruiting. Like once COVID hit, I don't know if you noticed this. I had another episode of a talent acquisition manager who actually spent like 2 months trying to tell people this is not a real offer from our company. There's companies that pretend to be like a recruiter from some other company and they give you a job offer. I mean, I get scammed all the time and I'm a recruiter.
You're right.
They're
Right.
sending me text messages. You want $2,000 a day? I'm like, okay, but if it seems too good to be true, don't talk to that recruiter.
Probably
Possibly.
is.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it probably is. Exactly. So yeah, I think the misconception you were getting at is like putting us all in the same bucket. I mean, listeners, if you had a bad boss, does that mean every single boss you were ever going to have is going to be bad? So that's a whole nother topic I think you're going to most dive into. How do you know if a recruiter is good? How do you know, not necessarily maybe scam versus not, but is this someone that could be my ally?
Yeah. And real quick, I'm not sure if we do want to start here, but I feel like it's important to define what that allyship means. What can this relationship, what can this, transaction, if you will, benefit me, right?
Yeah.
As the job seeker, as the recruiter. So like when I hear that allyship, again, what I said earlier, both parties have what they want. The recruiter wants to fill the requisition, right? The job seeker wants to get the best position for their situation. And again, the way I teach my team is we can be allies together. We can definitely find this together. We just have to be transparent and be honest that if this is the right opportunity, right? Because if not now, then it's when. It's not never, it's just later, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that's my understanding of it, but I'm not sure if you have different thoughts.
I'm with you 100%. And I think it is a together thing. I mean, I'm trying to think if there is ever a situation where like recruiters I personally know have worked with that they didn't want to support their candidate. Like we want to fill our roles. Trust us. We want to fill them. But we also have an obligation to the company to fill them with the right candidates. If we could get everyone we ever talk to a job, like we definitely would. And I think it's kind of going back to a misconception a little bit, but people think that recruiters don't want to hire them, and we have numbers to hit, and we want to morally. Like if you're a recruiter, especially if you make it over 2 years, you actually have a passion for it. Like it's not an industry you stay in, or a position you stay in that if you're not passionate about like helping people, talking to people, and finding their work. But we try to make it a win-win-win for the candidate, the recruiter, and the business. I mean, we're just one say in the whole process, but we're the first say. So you almost have to like get past the recruiter to even get to the ultimate decision maker usually. But in like 1 to 2 sentences, what can a recruiter do if they are your ally? And how could it hurt you if they are not your ally as a candidate?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll take it from my perspective, which is from preparing my candidates when I feel like I have that allyship. What I want them to do is make sure they understand what their motivations are, make sure they understand exactly what this position is, help them put themselves in the best kind of position. If, for example, the previous 2 points I was talking from a corporate recruiting standpoint, if I'm talking from maybe an agency standpoint and I have a client and I have a job seeker, I've been in positions where I make commission off of that base salary. I'm trying to pump this job seeker's tires as much as I can. And that's easily, that's your person, right?
Yeah.
Being totally transparent, like that's the right person for the search, but they're just a little bit more expensive, right? Because that benefits both of us, doesn't hurt the company because it's still within their budget. There's little things like that where when you have a recruiter who knows the product, and I say that as in like what the search is, what the company is, they'll be able to help you understand what those different aspects are because it is really, really complicated.
Yeah. And that's a good point too. The money piece, that's a misconception. People think that, Oh,
Right.
recruiters are just trying to like lowball you all the time. It's like, it's not my money. It's not coming out of my pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I also understand a salary band, and I know if I submit you at 180, but based on all my knowledge and the last two people that were in this job the past 10 years, the hiring manager will not pay you 180 with your background. And they're
Mhm.
like, well, you're just trying to, lowball me. It's not that at all. I mean, and like you said, on the staffing agency side, they're definitely not trying to lower your salary, because the more money you make, the more money they make
Exactly.
almost every single time. I'd say contract is a little bit different, but that's a whole another rabbit hole.
Mhm.
So recruiters can definitely help you with, would you say recruiters can help you with like your interviewing and job offers? I
Yeah, let's
mean,
break
at
that
the end of the
down with
day.
the preparation piece, right?
Mm,
So immediately when I'm talking to candidates for the first time, what I'm trying to learn about them is, why are we having this conversation? Because in 2025, you pick up the phone through effort, right? It's not like it's
yeah.
easy to get folks on the phone these days. So I'm wondering, what is this person looking for in this situation? Do they want more money? Do they want an easier commute? Do they want a better work-life balance? What are these factors, right? Once I have that established, I know exactly how I can benefit that person. In every single position that I've recruited for, I take an evergreen approach where when I'm talking to that person, I think, oh, you know what? They might not be right for this position, but in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months, who knows what can happen, right? And I can't tell you how many times I have called someone back and say, hey, remember how that didn't work out a couple weeks ago? Well, this new search came across my desk, and this, I think it's like pretty good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to earlier when you said honesty and
Mm-hmm.
transparency is number one, this is a great example of when it is number one. If you're just
Yeah.
honest with what you want, maybe you don't get that job that Steve initially reached out to you for. But like he said, he might have something later, and then it's going to match up. I've seen so many times where
Mm-hmm.
I'll recruit and people, a lot of job seekers, and I get it. Sometimes people are out of work and they're just taking a job. Like, I get it. But if you're in a better situation where you're currently employed and looking for work, be honest with your recruiter. We're not,
Yeah.
it's not a game like a lot of people think it is. Just be honest and you're likely
Yeah.
to get it. I've hired people personally that are like, yes, I love micromanagement. Yes, I can take feedback and thick skin. Obviously, I'm high leveling it. And
Mhm.
then their first week, they're like, I don't like this. I don't like it because XYZ. And it's like, wow, we just went over this for an hour in
Right.
the
What
interview.
changed? What changed? You
Exactly
know?
what changed.
And I'll raise you one further. I'm gonna tell a little story about, like, I was at a corporate recruiting position. It was a behavioral health organization. I was talking to someone who, to be honest, was kind of on their way out, right? They did an interview, they were getting cold feet. It was the same reasons that they were leaving their first organization. Through a couple of different conversations, realized that just like might not have been the right line of work, right?
Mhm.
Behavioral health, it's really, really tough, right? It just might not be right for some people. 2 weeks later, we had a maintenance technician search open up because it's that corporate location environment, right? I called this
Yeah,
person back. They pivoted their entire career into a
that's
maintenance
cool.
tech, into a technical kind of position, because they were open ended. We came to that conclusion together. And it was one of the most satisfying like conversations of my life, because we left it open ended. We stayed super transparent, and both parties still came out for the better.
That's really cool. And that's a big question that job seekers have all the time. How do I change industries?
Mhm.
And I think this is it. Make recruiters your ally. Especially,
Absolutely.
I think, especially when changing industries, because if it's a transactional type of recruiting, we're looking at resumes and we're moving on.
Mhm.
But you could put on your resume open to changing industries or something, and then that would speak that would catch my eye as a recruiter, especially in staffing. It's like, well, I hire so many different roles, so many different industries.
Yeah.
And a lot of my hiring managers are open to taking people from different industries, but it's really hard when you read a resume. You don't know, and then you got to call 100 people to find that one. And anyway,
Mhm. And real quick, just another quick tidbit. When we're talking about maybe who to look out for in identifying who might be a good candidate for an appropriate like recruiter who's an ally, look at recruiters who have the same work history as you do, right? Look at recruiters who were accountants. Look at recruiters who were in manufacturing and production and business
that's a good
development,
tip.
right? Those are folks who know exactly what the challenges, the rewards are in your industry. And then they also know how to do this recruitment piece. So they're going to bring both sides of that expertise.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I like that. I never thought about people doing that. That's really cool.
Some of the most
Ok
successful recruiters when I was in accounting and finance were those folks working 70, 80 hours during tax season or, in public accounting. But then, they liked working with people more than they liked working with numbers. So they were just as successful in a whole different field.
Yeah, yeah, I see it's funny you mentioned the accounting and finance. I see a lot of them come over to staffing at least, a lot of
Mhm.
them with, like,
Mhm.
accounting staffing firms.
Yeah.
So, they're easy to relate to, especially if you're in the accounting and finance sector, so really
Mhm.
good tip. So, how do you identify a good recruiter versus I don't wanna say a bad recruiter, but a not so good
Strengths and
recruiter?
weaknesses, right? We all
Yeah.
have them. We all have them. Um, the way I look at this is the way I've grown in my recruitment style. You know, I'll always take that conversational, relationship-based approach. So the very first time I'll get someone on the phone, I'll ask, "Hey, is now a good time to chat? Do you have like 5 or 10 minutes?" Because like you said, first impressions matter. What I don't wanna do is rush through my points or have them leave with a bad impression because they're in the checkout line, right?
Mhm.
Or they're getting dinner ready because their kid's gotta practice in 10 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
So, that's the first thing because if you start off with that relationship, hey, let's identify those motives. Let's figure out where you're coming from, what you want. It should be on that job seeker side. We should figure out what that person wants first. It's not about what this position is, right? Because
Yeah.
positions come and go, jobs come and go. That will always be available, right? In my opinion, like the rarity, like the actual good that we're trying to source, that's what we need to focus on. That's where we should start.
Like you said, there's a lot of gray area in the beginning when you mentioned it, because like, you were in tech, you're in stat like, all of them have different styles
Hmm.
and whatnot, and even candidates have different styles. Sometimes when I talk to candidates, they're just like, "Cut me off," "Tell me about the role. Before I tell you about myself, I wanna know about the role." And I get it, you're probably
Hmm.
getting called from 30 recruiters a day, you have a great resume,
Hmm.
um, but then we say kinda what you're saying, we're like, "Well, we wanna get to know you first because my role doesn't really matter right now. Just give me 3 minutes, that way I know what you're looking for." And just for the listeners, we try not to talk about the role first because then it makes your answers biased on the role, if that makes sense, when we're
Exactly.
trying to get to know what you want.
Hmm.
It's not about getting to know what you don't want, it's about getting to know what you want because that's a lot less of a list
Yeah.
than
Yeah. When I
than
do
what you
break it down, if we're and we'll kind of transition to this, like maybe in interview feedback or prep or whatever that looks like, I always ask folks, hey, is this something that you're moving toward, or are you just moving away from something? Right? The answer should always be moving towards something, not just moving from where you're at.
I like how you worded that, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's a good interview tip anyway. I feel like people should answer that, because then
Mhm.
you'll get into, like, the negative mindset, and here's everything I don't like, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're breaking it down and you're tossing a coin, what do you feel like when it's in the air? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any signs that a recruiter would show where the candidate should say, this recruiter probably isn't on my side, or do you think someone would ever run into that? I mean, maybe the scammer level, but any flags you can
Yeah.
think of?
Well, again, maybe not on my side, but, like, maybe not have my best interest prioritized,
Mhm.
right? Um, a lot of times when we're talking with folks who might not have recruitment as their specialty, they might be functioning as, like, dual HR, right? They might be doing a couple different functions. Those folks might not understand, again, speaking with bias, the importance of that recruitment function. So yeah, they might wanna just fill this position because they're not necessarily impacted by the repercussions of having, like, not the perfect person there, you know?
Mhm.
So, when you're talking or trying to figure out if your recruiter is maybe tipping the scales into that direction, I would try to, like, take a step back and think about what conversation points they're bringing up. Are they on an accelerated timeline? Are they talking about, like I don't like the term wearing different hats because there are some functions where like that is a part of it and like team orientedness is important. But are they like prepping you for bad news? Are they telling you about employee incentives instead of transparent compensation? Right? Is there a lack of transparency? I guess that's a better place to start. Is there some hesitancy with talking about the pre-employment process? Are you paying for your own background checks and screenings? Is there hesitancy to talk about, I don't know, the compensation because they know it's not industry standard? Is there hesitation to talk about the training process because there isn't one established?
That's all good information. And I think context is key because it's easy for like recruiters like you and I to speak technical. So I think the context is good for our listeners. It is kind of like a gray area too. Yeah, the hesitancy that could be a sign of either the recruiter or the company.
Mm-hmm.
I think also there's a big differences in internal versus external. I think
Yeah.
external, like staffing agency, you might want to question a bit more. Like it's gotten a little weird over the past couple of years. I'm an agency, and like a lot of the big agencies are outsourcing their recruiters in India and stuff, and they're trying to go around the agency and get the
Mm.
hiring. So it's like a lot of scammy stuff going on. So I think my advice for job seekers when you're working with an agency recruiter is ask them, does your company or does your team have a relationship with the hiring manager?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be, I don't want to say a bad recruiter, but one that you maybe not want to make your ally when they just got it off of a system,
Yeah.
or they just got
Yeah.
it, like they're just trying to like send random resumes out. I don't
Yeah.
think that's like an ally recruiter
I,
because they're not getting good business and they don't have that relationship. So it doesn't really matter
well,
as much.
it's just there's a limited superficial relationship with what that job is going to be. Right. At the end
Mhm.
of the day, there's just a limited pool from where you can get that information, And
Mm.
I think I want to rephrase the way we're talking about this because there aren't a lot of good ways, just to be totally honest, in my opinion, that you can identify a recruiter who's not going to be a good ally just from a LinkedIn profile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's going to have to be throughout the course of your relationship with that person, right? So like I said,
Mhm.
even on that, job seeker side, make sure you can have 10 minutes to ask your questions. How do you know this search? Are you internal? Are you agency? Like you just said, are you on a relationship with a hiring manager? Are you internal? All of those you are entitled to know, right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that you understand this, guys. Like this is your search, right? Like you shouldn't feel uncomfortable asking questions or getting an answer, right? Like it's your
Yeah.
right.
100%. Those are the questions you definitely want to ask. And even when you're talking to like a recruiter internally, ask them, obviously they work for the company, but
Yeah.
ask them, what's your relationship with the hiring manager? What do you think of them? And a good recruiter will be honest with you. I know you can't tell if they're being honest or not. That's a really
Right.
tough one. It's like you
Well,
could be
hold on,
lying.
because a good recruiter might even say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another really good thing. If you have a recruiter and they have every answer every single time, 100% of the time, about 5 different organizations, if they're with the staffing agency, odds are they're an absolute walking encyclopedia or kind of
Mhm.
arrogant. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So odds are like, they're going to be more arrogant. So like having someone who says, oh, shoot, you know what? I'm not sure. I got to ask someone. I got to ask
Yeah.
the hiring manager. Um, Especially when we're talking about intangibles like workplace culture. That's such a huge, huge thing. I don't know if in all the searches that I take part in, I always make sure to do on-site interviews in some way, shape, or form whenever applicable. If this positions has some sort of on-site, necessity, we're not doing 100% remote interviews, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You want them to
because you
come into
have to
the
be able to
office.
see for your own 2 eyes all of those details, right?
Yeah.
So if you know that going into a job search, talk to the recruiter about that. Say,
Mhm.
"Hey, what are the odds I can get there?" Or "When can I get there?"
Yeah.
Use verbiage like that.
Yeah. That'll make you look like a good candidate too, like you're
Mhm.
excited and you wanna know more, and we're impressed by those things, not pressed by those,
Yeah.
and some people think otherwise, so, like you said in the very beginning, we're human, get to know us on that level, ask your questions, and be you. If you get a
Mhm.
call, I know it can be, like, stressful looking for jobs and getting all these calls. If you're not in the right mindset to take a call from a recruiter, like, "Oh, this is the 10th recruiter," just don't answer your phone and call back when you feel better, or tell
Yeah.
them, now's not a good time.
Mhm.
Can I call you back in an hour?" Or reschedule it. Like, you wanna be this is kinda going back to, like, how to make a recruiter your ally. Another tip from myself, I guess, is when you're talking to a recruiter, be in a good mindset. There's a lot of recruiters out there, if it's a really bad conversation, you're not gonna be at the top of their list to find you work because we talk to hundreds of people a month.
Mhm.
So how to make a recruiter your ally, be in front of them, check in with them, not every day.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents.
Mhm.
What are some common mistakes that job seekers make that maybe will hurt? We kind of jumped into it a little bit, but that may hurt their relationship with the recruiter.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but communication is always the number one factor for me in um, just understanding if this person's serious about a search, right? So if there isn't a priority on communication, I assume that there's not a priority with other aspects in professional environment, right? Because
Mhm.
that's kind of the basis for so much that we do in our jobs, and that's kind of regardless of industry, right? In every
Yeah.
interview, I ask someone, what's important to you? What are you looking for out of your next opportunity? Communication is the number one answer, right? So if you're
Mhm.
not going to reciprocate that, I'm not very faithful in like what that relationship is going to do moving forward, right? So if
Yeah.
you're getting a little bit, I don't know, skeptical, or maybe it's just not the right search for you, I like we said, not like to be a broken record, but just be honest, be transparent. Hey, these are the reasons I'm kind of not really liking it. Maybe there is room for a remote opportunity or a hybrid opportunity. Maybe there is room in the budget for different compensation, right? But
Yeah.
we don't know if you don't communicate that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually in the middle of negotiations with one candidate, and the only reason we're here is because she's been honest. She's like, "Well,
Mhm.
I'm interested up to this point. We got the benefits a little bit late from our accounting customer. It's tax season, whatever. But we're honest. We're like, we don't have them yet, but let's just pause here. We'll get them for you, and then we'll regroup. We got it
Mhm.
for her, and she's like, the. I'm not interested because this company is not offering a 401k, but they have benefits and everything else. So we call our hiring manager back. Again, we're this person's ally. Hey,
Mhm.
we found a great person, but no 401k. Is there anything else you can do for him or her? And
Mhm.
he's like, well, we can up the salary. And then we are implementing a 401k in about like 8 to 12 months
Right.
is the goal. So then like, if you're honest, like we go and like push for you. Cause again, we want to
Yeah.
fill the position, and like we will help you as much as we can, especially if you're the right fit and right then and there. I want to say especially, but like if we have something right now we could do for you, we're going to do it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, yeah. And, a lot of that goes longer term than that. Like I said, if it's not
yeah,
now, I always take it as a later, not never, right? There's
exactly.
been so many times where I do have other connections, or I find a resume on Indeed and I go to find them on LinkedIn and I'm already a first connection with them,
Yeah,
because I looked at them 3 years ago in a totally different search. So again, but based on that relationship, don't ever close those doors on a sour note. Don't burn the bridges, right?
yeah. Don't burn the bridges. It does seem like it can be a lot of work for someone to like go through recruiters and whatnot, but keep in touch with them once you develop the relationship on like a visual or, verbal level on the phone. I would say a good tip is to like immediately if you get let go or you're looking for work, like
Mhm.
have an email list of your recruiters and email all of them and say, hey, just want you to know I'm open to hearing about opportunities.
Yeah.
Or I just got let go. Do you have anything? Here's my updated resume. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Mhm.
And then especially if we remember you, and we're going to look anyway, but I
Yeah,
think that's
right.
a good way to kind of keep recruiters your ally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another thing with that, and I kind of switching gears here, but it's coming up because I just don't want to forget to mention it, is again, just being honest with just where you're at, right? Hey, at the end of the day, this is a little bit too far of a commute, right? I didn't really get good vibes from the hiring team. I know you and I had a good first round interview, but when I got on site for that second call, it might have been like a half an hour conversation. They didn't really ask about me, that kind of thing. But if you're, just strong arming it through 2, 3 weeks later, it's just not going to do anyone any good.
Yeah.
Right. That's one thing I tell all of my candidates. Hey, worst case scenario is 2 or 3 weeks go by and then we're blindsided by something that we should have seen coming.
Hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
really, if we're not taking care of all of those details in the search, then they're going to come up and usually they're going to be problems.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else you want to add before we kind of like close out with the highlights? Like anything we didn't go over that you wanted to go over?
No, I think it really does just come back to keeping your mind open to have that conversation with that person. Try to not take it from the job title, try to take it from that person's name. because every person, I've worked with great recruiters who just have a great instinct. There's some awesome reps within 1 year of being on the phones, right? I've networked with industry professionals who have 15 years of recruitment experience, and they put a stone on the job if they could. So it just take it on that case by case basis, make your own decisions, and make sure it's something that you're comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, I might not be the best recruiter for someone like my wife, because we're totally different, types of people. But I'm going to be the best type of recruiter I can be for folks who give me the chance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I kind of took some notes throughout just so I could try to give the job seekers a good high level based on the tips that you gave and a couple of mine. So, how to make a recruiter your ally. Communication is key, as Steve mentioned. It's almost like meet your recruiter halfway. And we're looking at that indirectly. If you say, I'll follow up with you on Tuesday, follow up with them on Tuesday. And honesty, that will just lead to you having a better fit job, or maybe getting more of what you wanted out of that one job you're already talking about. Ask the right questions. And that's kind of vetting the recruiter. And I'll just throw the one I said earlier. Ask about the relationship when you're talking to the recruiter. Kbex, our company, we love bragging about our relationship with the hiring managers, because I feel like we're a rare breed left to where we won't work on roles unless we know the hiring manager and have met them. Yeah. So and we work through HR and TA and stuff, but we also have to have an intake with the hiring manager. So all the words that come out of our mouth came from the leaders of this position. So I think that makes a big difference on vetting the recruiters, and then before you make them your ally. But even the ones who work in the VMS, you could get lucky. They have a ton of roles too, and it's more of a sling and stick method where they're just slinging in a lot of resumes. But that's how you make the recruiter your ally. And then if you want to give the final recap on why it's important.
Yeah, there's just so many benefits that a recruiter can bring to the table during a really, really complex job seeking process. At the end of the day, us recruiters, we go through jobs as well. We know what it's like to be on the job market too. So as long as you're honest with us about where you're coming from, we'll do our best to support you in finding the best place for you.
Well, hopefully you listeners got some good tips out of here. There's a lot of good ones. We went over misconceptions and everything. So if anything, hopefully it makes you feel more comfortable on your search and know that we're on your side. As you could tell with me and Steve, it was really hard for us to describe what a bad recruiter is. I feel like just all recruiters want to help you. I mean, again, if it's a quote unquote bad recruiter, it's probably one of those scams, unfortunately. So those questions that we gave you will help you navigate through that. And good luck on your next job search. And we hope these tips help you out.
Thanks for your time, everyone.